Now back to Ian Furness on Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
All right, welcome back in. Sports Radio 950 KJR, your home for the Kraken. Who knows, maybe someday the home for the NBA again. And speaking of the NBA, joining us right now on the Beacon Plumbing Hotline, happy to have with us the former voice of the Seattle Storm, the former voice of the Seattle Supersonics, and the current voice of the number one seed in the NBA's Western Conference and the number one overall seed as well, the Utah Jazz. David Locke, Locked On Sports, joining us. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Here's a thought for you.
Yes?
While I was the radio voice of the Storm, I had to miss a game because my son was being born during Sue Bird's rookie season.
Oh, my God.
He turns 19 in 2 months. She's still playing.
So I'm not sure if I feel old, you feel old, Sue Bird should feel old, or we should just all feel old for that.
We should feel old. Sue Bird should not feel old. She seems to be at her peak still. I am not. I don't know about you.
I'm fading quickly by the day, and she's getting better by the day. That's why they're elite athletes and we're not. How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm doing good. I mean, yeah, relatively with all the craziness, we've been better off than most, and so it's good.
You know, it's interesting. I saw, I don't think it was a 30 for 30 before we get to the playoffs. It was something, a long-form piece on ESPN recently that they did kind of almost behind the scenes of, I mean, we all remember how the pandemic began in our country in terms of when it became real. From a nursing home in Kirkland, Washington, where it seemed surreal, it became real in Oklahoma City when you were there. I mean, the Utah Jazz and Rudy Gobert test positive, game stops, and literally in the next 72 hours, our country, because sports led the way, stopped. How long ago does that seem, or does it not seem that long ago for you that you guys went through that process?
I mean, in the sense I'm still calling road games from an arena and I'm not traveling for the playoffs, it feels like yesterday, right? Like my life is still, the things that I want to do most in life are still being screwed up by it. So in that sense, it feels like yesterday. And the other sense is that we've all just kind of been through it and gotten around it, and we're traveling again. And we're having 13,000 people in our arena. And I actually went to a party the other night and I just had lunch with people today. I mean, like in that stuff, you were obviously seeing the light at the end of the tunnel by being vaccinated and making that progress. And 13,000 people in the arena on Sunday, I think, is going to be a really emotional night, emotional time. I've always kind of, to me, that's been the moment I've been waiting for, where you have some normalcy. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't get how we were going to do it. I didn't think about it at the time. I didn't realize we'd go from like 2 to 5 to 8 to 13, right? Like I didn't ever kind of think about that. But the idea of being back in a full house with that collective energy, I think, is going to be a really emotional moment. The impact of having 6,000 people in the arena has been that you don't have a collective energy. My daughter actually is the one who pointed this out to me. I asked her what it was like to go to a game. We finally let her go to a game. And she said, it's great, but we just went on this was during a game. I texted her and she said, well, we just went on an 8-0 run and not everybody stood up. She's like, if one set of people stand up, it doesn't force the next group that's socially distanced to stand up also. And she said, if this was a regular home game with 17,000 people, if you go on an 8-0 run and hit the shot for the 8-0 run, everyone stands up together and cheers because there's a collectiveness. And so that's what we've been lacking. I'm wondering if having 13,000 people back in the building on Sunday will bring that back.
I would hope so. And I guess you're the number one seed is Utah in the Western Conference and the best record in the NBA this season. You earn that number one seed even without Donovan Mitchell. But one of the benefits of that is to have what you just said, home court advantage in a building that traditionally has been one of the best buildings for home court advantage in the NBA. Going back to, I believe, is this the first one seed since John and Carl and Jerry Sloan?
It's the first time the Jazz had the best record in the NBA outright. They twice before have tied for the best record in the NBA, and one time they had the tiebreaker with the Bulls for the number one seed overall in the NBA. And then that is also the only other time they had the number one seed in the West.
Let me look at the bigger picture. David Locke joining us, voice of the Jazz, here on Sports Radio 950 KJR. Last night we saw just a hell of a game. I mean, what a game. I'll be honest with you. I flipped it on at halftime, got back from a little golf thing, and I was mesmerized. I mean, locked on the television, pardon the pun, and I think everyone was. We all wondered what this play-in situation was be like. Boy, I know it was just the one game, and the other ones were whatever, but that one game certainly was unreal and compelling.
So you actually missed part of the story, because I think part of the story is how bad the Lakers looked in the first half.
Right.
LeBron and his greatness is that LeBron in the first half had no lift, didn't have any explosion, looked really old, frankly, and yet figured out how in the second half of the game to change his game to still dictate and win the game. I mean, in some ways, I think last night is one of those nights when we talk about LeBron's greatness. We obviously go to that Cleveland Cavalier game against Detroit when I think he scored 27 straight points. It's probably his single greatest moment. And then you have the titles. I actually think in some ways last night is a little bit of like the essence of a championship player, because he was not himself at all. He's not right. He's not in shape. He's got no explosion off that ankle. And he's, openly kind of said it. And I thought that was the explosion. The other one I would say about the play-in turn, and I probably would guess that in Seattle, you're not following it quite as closely. You don't have the connection to that one team. I think the play-in is the greatest rule change by any professional sports team in a professional sports league in probably 50 years. Like, I think we're literally going back to like the forward pass or like the lowering of the mound in 68, which they might want to consider doing something again, or something of that sort. It dramatically changed the entertainment value of the last 3 weeks of the season in a really, really significant fashion. So even whether these play-in games are any good, to me, change them. And I think they did it beautifully. The incremental difference between 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then a lot of people are saying it's a huge disadvantage for the 1 seed because, for example, the Jazz don't know who they're playing, so they can't prep. But whoever they get, Memphis or Golden State, is like going to be on oxygen by the time they get to Salt Lake City on Sunday. That's a really big advantage. Like people kept asking me as we got injured, how big is the 1 seed? I'm like, the 1 seed's mammoth, because whoever you play is going to have had to play 2 games of playoff intensity by the time they get to you and have no prep because they're playing Friday on the road or at home, flying Saturday, playing you Sunday. They have no chance. So I think they've done this in a manner that the appropriate advantage has been placed at every level.
I would agree. Well, I mean, I think we've talked about it on our show up here. We're closer to Portland, obviously. What the Blazers did to avoid those play-in games. I mean, they had to crank it up, and they made no bones about the fact they wanted to get number 6. Is this thing here to stay?
I think so. I don't think there's any question. By the way, I got a Portland note for you.
Yes.
You take Portland with Nurkic and Dame Lillard on the floor, which you would hope is probably going to be for 40 minutes a night, right?
Right.
They're plus 15.3 in those circumstances. Or maybe they're plus 11. You put them with CJ and Norm on the floor, they're plus 15. Portland rolls out 40 minutes of Dame, Nurkic, Norman Powell, CJ McCollum, and I don't care what else you do in the other 8 minutes.
Yeah. They're
beating Denver in the first round. They're losing to the Lakers in the second round, but they're beating the Suns in the second round. So they got a gift. They got the 2 teams that are paper tigers at this point. Phoenix is number 2 in the West because they were the healthiest and lost the fewest games to injuries. And as much as everyone's talked about how cute Denver is without Jamal Murray, they're actually not that good without Jamal Murray. He makes the thing work for the playoff level. Portland very easily could be if LeBron doesn't get right, and the NBA did not give LeBron the gift that I thought they would with his schedule. We love conspiracy theories. We never talk about when it doesn't happen. My conspiracy theory was the Lakers would play Sunday, Wednesday or Thursday, maybe Saturday or Sunday again, stretch that thing out so LeBron gets healthy. They did the opposite. They're playing Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday to get as much TV as possible out of them, which makes them vulnerable to me. So if Phoenix beats the Lakers, I'll take Portland over both Denver and Phoenix and play in the Western Conference Finals.
All right. Let me take a step back, because one of the things I love about you, David Locke, joining us, is your definitive opinions. Now, I'm looking here at the West, and I was going to ask you this, but it feels like the answer is probably going to be no. I was going to say, are there 4 or 5 teams in the West that could legitimately win the West and then beat a Philadelphia or beat a Brooklyn or beat a Milwaukee? I mean, it feels like the West has more teams that could win it all. But as you're kind of going through that, I kind of think we take Denver out of the mix. You say Phoenix is a paper tiger. How many legitimate teams are there in the West?
So I think there's 4 great teams in the West right now. And then Portland's actually got a possibility with those numbers I just showed to be a lot better than we realized. The 4 great teams in the West are the Clippers. When the Clippers have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the floor, they're plus 18 for 100 possessions. That's astronomical. That means if they played a regular game with them, they'd win by 18 every game. That's on pace to be like a 77 win team. That they're the best team in the NBA. The number 2 team, when they have Draymond Green and Steph Curry on the floor, are the Warriors. This is not a fluke. They lost last night, but with Steph Curry and Draymond Green on the floor together, they're plus 15. They were on the floor for 34, 35 minutes together last night. The Lakers with AD and LeBron on the floor are plus 14, and the Jazz with Rudy Gobert on the floor are plus 15. Those are the teams that with the playoff, get rid of all the junk that you played during the regular season. You're going to roll for 40 minutes, 41, 42 minutes a night of Rudy Gobert. You're going to roll Kawhi Leonard and Paul George for 42 minutes a night. Those are the 4 teams that when they've had their best players on the floor are considerably better than everybody else in the NBA. Portland's the wild card. We don't have a bigger sample size, and you got to get, and I don't know that Nurkic can go 40. I'm not sure he's in the physical condition or he can stay out of foul trouble long enough to go 40. But if he can, that puts them into the list. The Denver reason I say this about Denver, of against good teams in the West playoff times, they've lost 6 of their last 9 since Jamal Murray got hurt. So they really actually haven't won those games. Phoenix is really, really good. And against the best teams in the West, they've been good this year. But I can't find that magic lineup. What I can find out of Phoenix all year is good lineups. They played 48 solid minutes of basketball every night. But in the playoffs, you're playing other teams that can give you that same 48 minutes. And so I think they lose that edge that they had during the season. Jazz could be similar there, by the way. In just to get really granular with the Jazz, what the Jazz did this year is Derek Favors played against some starters. Rudy Gobert played against bench players. There should be constitutional amendments against Rudy Gobert playing against bench minutes. And when he does that, he's so dominant for the last minute or 2 of the first quarter and the first 4 minutes of the second quarter. That's where the Jazz are winning all their games. We'll see whether they can do that in the playoffs.
Monty Williams doing a hell of a job in Phoenix for sure, and a great story there for one of the good guys in the NBA.
But Mikal Bridges played every game. Chris Paul missed 2. Devin Booker missed 3. DeAndre Ayton missed 2. Like in a year of injuries, they didn't miss games.
Injuries and COVID and everything else. Donovan Mitchell's status, where's he at?
Practice today. Obviously, how he reacts tomorrow will be important. Seems to be a go.
And I mean, I think it's remarkable that Utah finishes 52 wins. How many games did he miss? Did Mitchell miss?
I think he missed the last 5 weeks, so about 16.
I mean, that's remarkable. I mean,
no, it's not.
You don't think? Why not?
Because they have like the 5th best player in the NBA playing every game.
In Rudy Gobert.
Yes, people don't get it.
But Donovan Mitchell's a top.
Wait, let me give you this.
Okay.
Rudy Gobert didn't have the best defensive season in the NBA this year. He may have had the single greatest defensive season by any player ever in the history of the NBA.
Explain.
Well, the first note is that the differential between when Rudy Gobert's on the floor and off the floor exceeded what any player ever has had in the history of the league. So Draymond Green had that prior with the Warriors in, I think, 16, 17. But the Jazz were 17 points better per 100 possessions when he was on the floor than off the floor defensively. I mean, just incredible. When he defends a shot within 6 feet of the basket, players shoot 14 percentage points below average. When he defends a player anywhere on the floor, they shoot 7 percentage points below average. Now I'm going to geek out for you for a second, but just really quickly. There's not defensive metrics. We're behind the curve on what good defensive metrics are. But there are 4 different systems that people are using right now, or 5. Of the 5, they all had 5 different players in seasons, 2 different Ben Wallace seasons, a Dikembe Mutombo season, a Dwight Howard season, and a Draymond Green season as the 5 best defensive seasons ever individually. Each metric had a different one. All metrics now have this season by Rudy Gobert as the best single defensive season ever.
So Utah and the Clippers more than likely in a second round, and you think you'll probably see Portland and the Lakers in a second round matchup?
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, I remember those numbers I just gave you. I think the Jazz get by the Warriors if the Warriors get by Memphis only out of fatigue. You go up 2-0 in a series out of fatigue, it matters. The Warriors are legitimately good. Steph Curry is that great. He breaks the entire game offensively. You can't do anything but double team him. And if until Steph Curry, when people talk about, oh, you got to double Michael, coaches across the league would be like, that's asinine. That's the silliest thing you can possibly do is double someone at 25 feet because we now have accepted, because Steph Curry is so great, that doubling someone at 35 feet is the right move.
That's insane. David Locke, final thought. Eastern Conference. Philadelphia's the 1 seed, Brooklyn the 2nd seed. So, what do you think there?
Numerically, Brooklyn is just so much better than maybe any team that's ever been constructed. I don't think they can be stopped. It's just the math. They're so efficient offensively and so unreal. I don't care if they play any defense at all. They have no one talks about Joe Harris, but we
do out here, man. The pride of Chelan. Are you kidding me? Of course we talk about Joe Harris.
So the Heat had LeBron, Dwayne, and Chris Bosh, and then they had Ray Allen. Joe Harris is every bit Ray Allen to Kevin Durant, James Harden. And Harden's a basketball genius. And so I think and I've talked to people that are in Brooklyn with that organization, and they say it's unbelievable that he's just that's the number one thing they've been taking away. Coaches who've coached against Harden think he's a basketball genius. They're way better than everyone else. However, the route to get to the finals that Philadelphia has is so much easier than what either Brooklyn or Milwaukee's going through that I think that you really have to consider Philadelphia. They're playing Charlotte or Indiana, they'll walk. They'll play it, they'll get it done in 5. They're playing Atlanta or New York, they'll walk and get it done in 5. They'll have played 10 easy games by the time they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. Milwaukee's going up against a really, good Miami team and may or may not win that series. With the next series against Brooklyn, Brooklyn's going up against Boston, who will push them. Brooklyn will win, but will push them. And then they will play the next series and may or may not win. They will have likely played 12, 13 games. That difference, coupled with the fact that Philadelphia is at home, could give the Sixers a game. And now all of a sudden, you're not trying to win a 7-game series. You've got to win 4 out of 6, right? Fatigue could just get Brooklyn and Milwaukee. And frankly, Brooklyn's health is playing Russian roulette with basketball games. Every time they play an extra game right now, it's a chance they have an injury that derails them. So if I had to put money down, I would take Philadelphia because the odds are better for them. Brooklyn's the best team in the East.
I would be remiss, David Locke, if I let you go without commenting on Seattle as a city. We heard both Glenn Taylor from Minnesota talk about expansion. There's a report from Sportsnet out of Toronto about expansion to Seattle. It's different. You're not traveling right now, but you're still talking to guys around the league. What are you hearing about Seattle and expansion?
I thought, it got really, really quiet there for a while. It was disturbing, I think, probably for you as much as it was for me, how very, very quiet. So it's nice to hear it bubbling up again. I think it's all financial driven. I think the league, let me say 2 things. I think the league needs expansion. There's more talent in the league that's ever been in the league. We've gone way too long without expansion for the amount of talent in the league right now. The league needs expansion. There's too many players that are really, really good that actually don't get to play. I'm not worried about the quality. Here's the one of 2 things that's going to take place, and this is not my forte, but this is what I'd watch if I'm Seattle. I think there's a bunch of teams that need money. I think there's a chance of a real cash call universally across the league by owners to their investors saying, we need money. We didn't have enough revenue this year for us to make ends meet. We got a $30 million cash call. We got a $20 million cash call. How investors react to that inside these organizations is going to dictate what happens next. And one of 2 things I think will happen next. Either you are going to see a bunch of these Red Sox venture capital group is. Mm-hmm. You're going to see a bunch of venture capital firms buying 25 or 30% of NBA teams to be that cash influx. If you don't see that, the cash influx is the expansion to Seattle and somewhere else. So it's a financial game. It's not anything about the right thing to do. It's not anything about the game. It's not anything about that. It's about the league's need for financial money. And I think that's the route. The one of 2 routes takes place for that. if you can get enough VC investment, you get the cash, you don't have to divide the TV money. That's probably preferable to the current owners.
As you know, passionate fan base here in Seattle. As we get ready for the NBA playoffs, just judging on the television numbers over the years, people watch it still, even though they say they don't watch it up here until the Sonics come back.
Well, there's a lot of people on my Twitter timeline who told me they were never watching the NBA again about last April that seemed to be in May that seemed to be commenting on the Jazz a lot for me. So I seem to be experiencing the same thing. I heard a really loud contingency of Jazz fans saying they were never following the team ever again. And they seem to be wearing the gear and rooting for them. So, like if you'd like to be false grandstanding, go for it.
Yeah. Instead, just enjoy the games. And I think you gave us reason to. My friend, great catching up with you. We'll talk to you down the road. I appreciate the time.
See you, buddy.